Hello friends, welcome back. Today I wanted to show you how I set up my reading journal. So first of all, this journal is watercolor paper, which is really fun. I have done a little bit of watercolor in it, but not a ton. I mostly write in it as it's a journal. But it is from a shop called mymellodays.com, and I will link that in the description box below. The first few pages in this are from last year's reading journal. I didn't end up journaling that much because I got overwhelmed with the way that I was using it, but I have a new system now, which I'm going to show you, and so I've just kind of skipped that chunk of pages in the front and set up for 2024. So the type of pages that I have are a list of 24 books to read in 2024, which I don't actually have completely filled out because I haven't decided everything that I would like to get read in 2024, but there are a few books listed there. I also have my most anticipated releases, so this is where I write down all the books that I'm really looking forward to that are coming out in this year, and the date that they release on, and I add to it as more books are announced throughout the year. Then I have a list of the best books of the year, which are where I write down all of the books I've read that were 5 stars, and the month that I read them in. Then I have a quick reviews page. So this is where I write down every single book that I've read and just how many stars I gave it. That way I just need to quickly reference what I did read and in what order I read them and how many stars I gave them. I can just look at this page and I will know at a glance. And then after that, I have my reviews, my book reviews. So for my book reviews, I used to draw the cover. That's what I was doing last year. I was just drawing the cover in and adding some watercolor or some colored pencil, and that was taking way too long, and I ended up stopping journaling because it was too much work. It was way too much work, and then I had to write, and I just ended up not doing it. I got burnt out. So this year I bought this handy little device. It's called a Canon Ivy 2. It is a photo printer. It prints from your phone. This is not an ad or sponsored or anything. I bought this with my own money and I really just love it. It uses sticky photo paper, so it's already a sticker when you print it, and it's so cool. You don't have to replace the ink or anything in this printer because the ink is somehow in the printer paper. I don't know how that works, but so all you need is the paper and the ink is in the paper. You load it up. There's an app that you download, and what I do is I go in, and every time I've read 4 books, I only ever journal when I have increments of 4 books that I've read, and I go in and I screenshot the cover of each book that I read, and I usually just do that through Goodreads, and then I go into the app and I choose the collage option, and then there's an option for 4 spots, which are like exactly the shape of a book cover, which is very convenient, and you put in your 4 book covers and then print it out. And so I'm only using 1 sheet of sticker paper to print out the covers of 4 books, which feels like an economical way of doing it. I'm sure if you wanted to, you could print out 1 cover per page. It would be a very large sticker and take up a lot of your journal pages, but maybe that's your style. But I like the little tiny versions, so I print that out. I then take that sticker sheet and cut it up into the 4 individual covers. It's really easy, just cut along the lines. And then I peel off the back and stick it in my journal. So I'll stick it over on the left, and then on the right, I have 3 categories of what I track because I can't do anything more than that. It gets too overwhelming and I will just quit. I have ADHD. If something gets too overwhelming or I get bored, it's over. So I just have 3. I write down the star rating of the book. I write down what the genre was. Sometimes there's more than one. Often, actually, there's more than one genre that it fits into. So I'll write those down. And then I'll write down the author of the book because sometimes it's hard to see the author's name on these printouts. So I write down the author of the book. Then I will write down just 2 or 3 sentences about my thoughts on the book, how the book made me feel. It can be both. It can be either. I write that down, and then I will pick a few quotes from the book that really stood out to me, and I'll jot those down, because one of my favorite things about reading is finding parts of the book that really stand out, and good quotes and excellent writing. I've only recently started annotating my books. I'm actually annotating my first book right now, and I'm having so much fun. I'm annotating Jane Eyre, which is my favorite book, and I have 3 girls that are all interested in reading it one day, and I thought it would be fun to annotate it with my thoughts and what stood out to me, and that would be fun for them to read that later. So that's been a really fun journey. So in this particular video, I've got 8 books that I have done. I was waiting to journal so that I could film it, and then I ended up waiting too long and ended up with 8 books instead of 4 books. So just extra footage for us, I guess. But the first book that I am journaling is The Prisoner's Throne, which was on my list of most anticipated releases this year. I really enjoy Holly Black's writing style. I enjoy the world she builds. I enjoy how she definitely keeps her fairy characters a little bit more traditional in the fact that they're very mischievous and tricksters and not necessarily looking out for the best interests of humans. I really enjoy that aspect of it. And The Prisoner's Throne is the second book in a duology that came out this year. And I was, like I said, really looking forward to it. I listened to this one on Audible, and I loved it. It was great. It was written from the perspective of Prince Oak, and the first book in the duology is written from the perspective of Wren, I believe her name is. But very good. I own a copy of the first book in the duology, and I have ordered a special edition of the second book in the duology to put on my bookshelf, for my book trophies. The next book I read, I won't go into too much detail because it's actually the 3rd book in a series. I actually don't know how many books there are in this series. I think it might be up to 6. But this is called House of Striking Oaths, and it is a fantasy romance. It's a journey of a girl finding out who she is, where she belongs, and it's very political. There's a huge political plot going on in the background, which was interesting. This one I get a little bit frustrated. The main character definitely has a lot of growing up to do throughout the series. This particular book did improve quite a bit, but I kind of just read this one because I'm interested to see where the story is going. But I go a long time between picking up books in this series, and it'll probably be a while before I move on to book 4. The next book I read was called The City of Stardust, and I do have a special edition of this one, and I'm really glad that I do because I loved it. I would describe this as, if you've ever read Erin Morgenstern's The Starless Sea, it has those same vibes, that same aesthetic, but it has more plot. Starless Sea gets a lot of criticism because there's not a whole lot of plot there. It's just definitely more vibes. And this one is really similar, but it did have more plot, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really beautiful, and yeah, I do highly recommend this one. I gave it 5 stars. All right, the next book was kind of just like a palate cleanser book. It was this really short story called That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite. I thought the story was entertaining, but didn't love the writing style. And didn't love some of the choices of the main characters. I didn't think they made sense. The next book I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Started with Ali Hazelwood with The Love Hypothesis, and that was actually the first romance novel I ever read. I think I read it back in 2022, and that was the first time I'd ever read a romance novel. I had been a very strict fantasy reader up until then. And I actually ended up really enjoying it. They're kind of silly. Sometimes they're a bit ridiculous. This one was no exception. There's something that happens in the book that I guess is part of the Omegaverse, which I don't even really know what that is. But it was really like, what the... but I was entertained. I had a good time reading it. The next book that I read was One Dark Window. I gave this one 5 stars. It was a political fantasy with a tiny bit of romance in there. I went into this with very low expectations because it was on the recommended by TikTok table. Their books are very hit or miss for me. This one though, I loved the cover. I wanted to give it a try, and I'm glad that I did because I ended up loving it. I gave it 5 stars. All right, next I read The Curse of Saints. I actually ended up moving this one up on my TBR because the second book for this is coming out and there is going to be a special edition of it. I do have the special edition version of the first book, and I wanted to make sure I actually liked the book before I go ahead and purchase the second book. So I went ahead and moved it up on my TBR, and I actually ended up really liking it. I think it's got kind of mixed reviews on Goodreads. It's 5 stars for me. It was a political fantasy, and it actually reminded me a lot of Throne of Glass. The Throne of Glass series was very similar to that, but it was a little bit more grown up. I mean, this was an adult fantasy, and I believe the Throne of Glass series is a young adult fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the twist at the end actually did kind of catch me by surprise, which is kind of unusual because I've read so many fantasy books at this point that I've basically seen it all. So I was a little bit caught off guard at the end, and I appreciated that because that doesn't happen to me very often. And then lastly, I read this amazing book. I so recommend this. I want to give this to people as gifts, but I feel like it would be offensive to get a book about cleaning as a gift because it would feel like someone is judging you. But that's not why I want to give this as a gift, because I think this does such an amazing job. Hold on, let me first tell you what the title of the book is. It's How to Keep House While Drowning. It's written by Casey Davis, who I believe is a therapist. It's kind of like a self-help, psychology, advice, how to be better at cleaning. But it focuses very, very heavily on uncoupling morality from having a clean house, which I loved and I felt so seen by. And I know there's so many people out there that have really troubling feelings about who they are as a person being reflected by the tidiness of their home. And you are worthy regardless of whether your home is clean or dirty or somewhere in between. And the author of this book did a really good job of driving that point home. And I really loved that for myself, and I love that idea for other people who I know really struggle with that. And there's so many reasons that you could struggle with keeping a clean home. There's mental health issues, there's physical health issues, there's all kinds of things that can be a struggle. For me personally, I have ADHD, which can make it very hard to stay on top of tasks that I hate doing and I find boring. But this had some very helpful advice on how to kind of stay on top of things when you're struggling, and that it's okay. It's okay if certain cleaning tasks fall through the crack. You're not a terrible person. And really, there's never going to be a point where you don't have something to clean. There's always something to clean. So don't attach your morality and don't attach your feeling of being allowed to take care of yourself, being allowed to do things that are relaxing and fun, only after you've cleaned everything, because there's never going to be a time where everything in your life is clean and tidy and organized, because that's just the nature of life. Things get messy. Right after you clean something up, it gets messy again. So I really love this. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And this is a great way to end the video. I mean, a 5-star read. Highly recommend. And it's short. It's about 200 pages, so definitely recommend you pick that up. Thank you so much for taking a look at my reading journal with me. I hope this helps you in some way. I hope that if you're thinking about setting up a reading journal, this might help you a little bit. The system of only filling in about half a page for me and printing out the cover of the book has really worked, and I've stuck with it, and I can just wait to fill it in after I've got 4 books, so I can do it all at one time. And that's enough time for me to have not forgotten what I liked about the books. In the meantime, if I go too long, then I forget, and which is the point of having the reading journal mostly for me, is so I can remember what I read, what I liked about it, and maybe a few key points. But anyways, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me and watching this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a comment if you made it all the way to the end, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!